Welcome to the Cherry Spoiler Show. I'm your host Paul, aka your friendly neighbourhood spoiler man, and this video we're breaking down the ending of Cherry. Directed by the Russo Brothers, the Tom Holland movie has a lot to unpack from it, and throughout this video we're going to be going over its story, ending, and our thoughts on it. Full spoilers ahead, so if you haven't had a chance to check out the film, then I recommend that you check out now. Make my day have a cherry on top by smashing the thumbs up button, and also subscribe for videos like this every week. With that out of the way, thank you for clicking this. Now let's get into Cherry. Okay, so Cherry is somewhat of a twisted love story that centers around addiction and breaking a toxic cycle. The film is actually based on the autobiographical story of the same name by Nico Walker, and this documented many of his highs and lows. Because of the narration and life story elements within the film, I sort of view it as a cross between Forrest Gump and Requiem for a Dream. It's getting a lot of mixed reviews, and one of the biggest criticisms I've seen lobbied against it is that Tom Holland is completely miscast as a bank robber. Personally, I kinda think that's the point, and you aren't really supposed to see this guy as a believable threat. Instead, I took the movie as portraying how even a good kid can end up doing bad things if he's placed on certain paths with the wrong sorts of people. Walker stated that the title Cherry refers to the phrase pop the cherry, and though this is normally used in a way that refers to losing your virginity, the author said it's meant to be more of a reference to a transition in life. Nico goes through several of these transformations, and whether it's him being a student, joining the army, or becoming a criminal, at several points in the film a red title screen is used to show how he's gone from one state to another. Holland to me gives a great performance, and I really respect that he as an actor is taking on challenging roles instead of just sticking to comic book movies, even though he does shoot his web fluid at one point. However, that doesn't mean I don't think that the movie doesn't have any faults. I did struggle to see what Nico sees in Emily, who is pretty much the love of his life. She's basically the Jenny in this story, and is rather cold, even to the point that when Nico tells her he loves her, she just says thank you. Spooked by this admission, she says she wants to go to school in Canada, basically ending their relationship, and thus Nico decides to enlist in the army. She does eventually admit that she loves him, but by this point it's too late to stop him from heading out. Now this is the first moment in the movie when Nico is presented with a choice, and rather than making the right one, he makes the wrong one. Made a medic, Nico is sent to Iraq, where he sees firsthand that the training he's received is pretty useless and nothing he does is any help to anyone. I feel like this movie is very anti-army, and at one point it even portrays them as just kids playing war games. They even alter the aspect ratio so it feels like an old school television show rather than something that's actually happening, and because of this it's difficult to take the life and death experiences that they're being trained for seriously. Nico is clearly rocked by the experience, and after the trauma he faces firsthand in the field, he develops mental health issues which lead to him seeking out help in America. Prescribed Oxycontin by a man named Dr. Whomever, Nico ends up going on to harder stuff. From here, he and Emily end up on a downward spiral when both become addicted and they enable one another. They end up being put in charge of guarding a safe, which they smash open, and after pushing and flushing most of the contents, they become indebted to a big dealer named Black. In order to pay him back and continue their addiction, Nico begins to rob banks, and after facing no real resistance, he becomes a career criminal. Now the film ends with Nico realizing that things are gonna get worse and worse as long as he's with Emily. At this point, getting high isn't just something they do, it's very much a cornerstone of their relationship, and when she overdoses, her mother asks Nico to leave her alone. I think it's at this point that Nico realizes that they're going to constantly be in the cycle of committing crimes in order to fuel their addictions. This will put the woman that he loves in more danger, and thus he has two options. Either continue on this path or remove himself from the situation. He tries to put Emily on a bus, but she refuses, and this cements to him that as long as the pair have their addictions, the relationship will continue to be toxic. Though he loves her more than anything, I think Nico realizes that he's not someone who's responsible enough to control his actions, and that he and Emily will always end up back together unless he forces a way for them to be apart until they get clean. Nico says goodbye to Emily and heads to a bank to commit his final robbery, which is where he tells the teller to sound the alarm. He heads out and hands the last of the money that he owes over to Black, and fires a gun in the middle of the street in order to draw attention to himself. After injecting for the last time, he waits for the police to arrive and is then sent to prison. Now this is actually how the book itself ends. The real Nico wrote it in prison and therefore didn't really get to add the events that we see play out in the movie. After serving his time and growing a mustache, Nico leaves prison, fiddling with his wedding ring, in a move that is similar to what we saw in Iraq with a soldier trying to get the blood to come out of his. Similar to that soldier, Nico was away from the one that he loved, and he viewed the ring very much as a symbol of their bond, even though they were apart. This is something that kept him going through his time in prison, and the character was clearly desperate to see Emily again. Emily going to Canada and him going to Iraq were both things that kept them apart from each other, and it allowed the pair to figure out what they wanted, but the trauma he faced eventually led to more. Prison, on the other hand, enabled him to get sober, and being away from Emily, it also allowed her to do the same thing. Nico became somewhat of a star prisoner, and after serving years to the point that Tom Holland actually went through puberty, he was released on parole. My bad, Tom, yeah, you know I love you, you know I love you, yeah. Now the film ends with the pair both free of their addiction, with Nico's focus on Emily rather than his trauma. We cut to the title against the red background that shows another transition in his life, and this cements that going forward he's gonna be a different person. Now one of the big questions hanging over the film is who shot Coke. The character ends up fleeing during the middle of a robbery, and when we next see him, he's been fatally injured. I have watched the scene several times to figure out exactly how this happened, and there are two moments in which I think things went down. Upon fleeing the bank with Nico, we can hear what sounds like gunshots, and at no point during this is Nico ever fired at. When they're in the car, Nico also says he hears something which, because of the cut in the scene, is likely a gunshot, and due to the police driving off at this moment, I believe it could have happened during this. It's difficult to tell exactly what moment this was, but those two are probably the most likely. Now before we get into our review, I just want to let you know we're giving away a Marvel 4K box set of your choice to 3 subscribers on the 31st of March. All you have to do to be in with a chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the film. The winners of last month's competition are on screen right now, so if that's you, then message me on Twitter at Heavy Spoilers. Okay, so what did I think of the movie? Well, as I mentioned, it's getting mixed reviews, and I think I sort of fall in the middle of that. I don't think this is absolutely terrible like some people are saying, but I also don't think that it has a lot of special moments in it. In Iraq, I felt the movie's pacing severely suffered, and because of the budget, it was difficult to believe that they were in any combat situations. The pacing was completely off at this point, and I thought it was really difficult to fully connect with the characters in the absence of Emily, who is very much the person that Cherry focuses around. Now why I say that is because though Nico is the main character, all of his actions and what he does tend to be in service of her. Therefore, when she's removed, it's difficult to stay engaged with the story, as we know that he will have to return to her before any more major developments occur. They could have cut about 20 minutes out of the film without losing anything, and I feel like this plotting does bog the film down a bit. Now though it is a necessary examination of PTSD, it also makes it feel just slightly bloated. I know that sounds super disrespectful to people who suffer from it, but just as a piece of film, I felt like those moments in Iraq derailed the film a bit. Now, it is very stylish in its direction, and the Russo Brothers were clearly trying to make something memorable. However, they do go a bit over the top, such as the butthole shot, and a lot of the time it feels like it's mimicking other movies, but to less degrees of success. I kind of got a lot of Goodfellas vibes from it too, but whereas the characters in that had a dark comedic side to them, Cherry feels super depressing and bleak, so it's difficult to really feel like it isn't exhausting at times. I'm guessing that they're gonna push for Oscars with this, and whether you think it deserves it or not likely depends on whether you think Holland is right for the role. Personally, I liked him, but I would have liked to have seen more streamlining going on in the film in order to narrow down its runtime. In the end, it's difficult to recommend Cherry to everyone, but those who haven't seen the bright and bubbly teen turning to drugs story over 1,000 times before will probably find something to enjoy here, and that's why it gets a 5.5 out of 10. Now obviously I'd love to hear your thoughts on the film, so make sure you comment below and let me know. If you want something else to watch, then check out our breakdown of why Justice League sucks, which is probably one of my funnest videos. We went over the Joss Whedon film for the last time before the Snyder Cut releases, and it's just a nice trip down memory lane reminding us how bad that movie really was. With that out of the way, thank you for sticking through the video. I've been Paul, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.